program. So what is the purpose of these step-by-step instructions? These are just step-by-step instructions, a program. The way you would have a program for a funeral or a program for a wedding or a birthday party, there is always a program, step-by-step, what will happen after what event. So there is that step-by-step instructions for the audit program. It indicates the step-by-step instructions for the audit team. Who will perform what? How will the task be performed? By whom? And at what point in the period of auditing the organization? So what is the purpose? What is then the purpose of an audit program? What is the purpose of an audit program? Now, one is to guide the audit team. One provides guidance to the audit team. Now, candidates, if you have a team of people working on any project, it could be an audit assignment or any assignment. It could be even just a football team or any team on that is supposed to achieve a certain end. There has to be a program. There has to be a step-by-step instructions on what each individual is going to do. So an audit program provides guidance to the audit team. Okay, it provides clear instructions to the audit staff, especially the less experienced members on the specific tasks that they are required to execute. So it provides guidance to the audit team. It also ensures completeness. An audit program ensures completeness and consistency. An audit program ensures completeness and consistency. It helps ensure that all necessary audit areas are covered and that procedures are applied consistently across the engagement. It is also a basis. This program is a basis for control and supervision. When everyone is given assignment on what to do and when to do it, then controlling the work becomes possible. Supervising such stuff becomes possible because such supervision is carried out on the basis of the audit program. It allows the audit seniors, the managers, and even the partners to effectively direct, supervise, and review the work of their team members. For documentation, there is also an advantage or a purpose in relation to documentation of work performed. Documentation of work performed. An audit program serves as a record of the audit procedures that are carried out, which is essential for audit documentation and quality control. 5. An audit program facilitates delegation. Facilitates delegation. Audit work facilitates delegation. It enables the delegation of tasks while maintaining control over the overall audit quality. Then lastly, there is the purpose related to efficiency. Efficiency. By pre-planning procedures, it helps avoid duplication of effort and ensures efficient use of resources. So that is the meaning of audit programs and the purpose of audit programs. That now makes us move to the next aspect of this lesson, which is the elements. What are the elements or components? What are the components or elements of an audit program? That's another question we need to answer. A well-developed audit program typically includes things like audit objectives. It includes specific audit procedures. It includes many aspects. But the first one, candidates, the first component of an audit program is audit objectives. An audit program must have audit objectives, objectives of the audit. There has to be clear statements of what the audit aims to achieve for each area being audited. It could be to confirm the existence or valuation of inventory. It could be to verify the completeness of revenue recognition. It could be to provide an opinion on the financial statements. There has to be an objective. So every audit program must have the objectives of the audit. And these objectives are linked to the financial statement assertions like existence, completeness, valuation, rights and obligations, presentation and disclosure, and so on. 2. Specific audit procedures. An audit program must have specific audit procedures or steps. There has to be details, instructions on the actions to be taken to gather evidence related to each objective. And these procedures can include tests of control, substantive procedures, tests of detail, analytical procedures. It can also include assertions addressed, things like working paper references. You understand, candidates? Work done, you have review of sign-offs, the time budget, and so on. You understand? So we have audit objectives, we have specific audit procedures, okay, which I've said includes tests of control. It may include substantive procedures. Tests of substantive procedures comprise of tests of details. It may also comprise of analytical procedures. You understand, candidates? Then you have assertions. Okay? We have assertions, candidates. For each procedure is often linked to the specific financial statement assertions that it aims to address. You understand? So the key elements of audit program would also have, apart from the specific audit procedures, we have the assertions. 3 assertions that are addressed. What assertions? Then there is the working paper references. Working paper references. We have maybe columns or spaces to record where the results of each procedure are documented in the audit working papers. We may also have done by and date columns. Done by and date columns. These are spaces for initials of the auditor who performed the work and the date it was completed. This enhances accountability. Then there is review sign-offs. Review sign-offs. These are spaces for senior auditors, managers, or partners to sign off on the completion and review of each section of the audit program. It may also have 7 time budget. An audit program may have a time budget. This is often an estimated time budget for each section or procedure that is included to aid managing the auditor's progress. time budget. So these are 7 key components of an audit program. Now, in closing this lesson, we are going to discuss the process of developing an audit program. What is the process? We've defined what an audit program is. We've highlighted the purpose and the components. So what is the process? What are the steps in the process of developing an audit program? That's the question that we want to answer next. Now, the development of an audit program is not a generic exercise because it is tailored to the specific client and engagement based on the audit planning strategy. So the process begins by reviewing the overall audit strategy. 1. Review of audit planning strategy. The process begins by reviewing the audit planning strategy. Reviewing the audit planning strategy. The audit program flows directly from the overall audit strategy, as we saw at the beginning, which includes the assessment of the client's business, the industry, the assessing the industry, the risks, and even the planned reliance on internal controls. Then the second step is to identify significant accounts and assertions. Identify significant accounts and assertions. Step number 2. Identify significant accounts and assertions. Now, based on the risk assessment, the auditor identifies the financial statement accounts and disclosures that are most significant, that are also more significance, like existence, completeness, valuation, and so on, for each that carry the highest risk of material misstatement. Then the third stage in developing an audit program is to determine the audit objectives for each area. Determine audit objective for each area. Determine the audit objective for each area. For each significant account and assertion, specific audit objectives are formulated. For example, for accounts receivable, objectives might be to confirm the existence of recorded receivables and to ensure receivables are properly valued. So there has to be audit objective for each area. There could be objective for accounts receivables, there could be objectives for accounts payables, there could be objectives for inventory, and so on. So in developing an audit program, that has to be determined. The audit objective for each area has to be determined. Then after that is done, then we design specific audit procedures. Design specific audit procedures are then designed after determining the audit objective for each area. For each objective, the auditor designs a set of specific actionable audit procedures, and the nature, the timing, and the extent of these procedures are also determined by risk assessment, by effectiveness of internal controls, and by materiality, including prior audit expertise and professional judgment. So the procedures are designed. The specific audit procedures are designed, and they are determined by various factors, like the risk assessment. The higher assessed risks will lead to more extensive and rigorous procedures. That is a factor to determine, because the risk assessment was done previously based on risk assessment. The risk assessment that was carried out will determine the extent of the audit procedures. Another factor that determines the specific audit procedures is the effectiveness of internal controls, such that if controls are strong and tested as effective, then substantive procedures might be reduced. But if controls are weak, then the company will have substantive testing, which will be required. Another factor to consider when designing specific audit procedures is materiality. Procedures are designed to detect misstatements that are material to the financial statements. The fourth factor is prior audit experience. These are insights from previous audits of the same client which can inform the current programs. Then, of course, there is the aspect of professional judgment. That is also a factor. The auditor's experience and judgment are vital in selecting the most appropriate and efficient procedures. So that is the fourth stage, designing specific audit procedures. Then number 5 is allocating resources. 5, allocate. After the procedures have been developed, specific procedures, then you allocate resources. Resource allocation. Resource allocation. Allocate resources, and this may also include responsibilities. Allocate resources and responsibilities. After designing specific audit procedures, then allocate resources and responsibilities. The audit program indicates which team members are responsible for performing the specific procedures that have been developed in stage number 4. So there has to be allocation of responsibilities. Who is to perform the procedures that are developed in stage number 4? You understand? Considering their skills, considering their experience, considering the expertise. Based on the expertise, then all these resources are allocated to the employees or the audit staff. Review and approve. After allocating responsibilities, remember, these responsibilities are not carried out. It's just allocating. It's a plan. It is a program. Before the audit begins, first of all, we had the audit planning strategy. Then flowing from the strategy, we'll have the audit program. Then within that program, responsibilities are allocated and resources. Then step number 6 is to review and approve the audit program. The draft audit program is reviewed by more senior members of the audit team to ensure its comprehensiveness, to ensure appropriateness, and also to ensure that it aligns with the audit strategy and professional standards. And at this point, adjustments can be made as necessary. You understand? Then, of course, we can add modification. We can say flexibility and modification. Flexibility and modification. Flexibility and modification. Now, while a detailed plan is essential, audit programs should not be rigid. Auditors must be prepared to modify the program during the audit field work if new information or unexpected findings emerge that alter the risk assessment or even necessitate different procedures. So this is a systematic approach of developing an audit program. That is the end of the lesson. In this lesson, we've defined what an audit program is. We've identified 6 purposes of an audit program. We've also highlighted the process of developing an audit program. Thank you for attending the lesson. Bye-bye. Greetings and a warm welcome to the lesson. The subject is auditing. Today we are going to define two things, that is internal controls and internal control system. The topic is risks, errors, and frauds in an organization. Today's focus is on internal controls. So what are internal controls? Internal controls are specific policies, procedures, tasks, activities, rules, and automated tools that are designed and implemented by an entity's management to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of the entity's objectives. For the objectives of an organization to be met, internal controls have to be implemented. Internal controls have to be, first of all, designed, then implemented. And internal controls are rules, procedures, tasks, activities, and automated tools that the management has to implement and design so that the objectives of an entity may be met. So that candidates, we may have controls over the sales system. When selling, there has to be controls. When purchasing, then there are also controls that are required. Controls may be required when dealing with the entity's non-current assets like motor vehicles, like buildings, land, equipment, computers. When you have such assets, then you have to have in place controls. Controls may also be required when dealing with cash. So controls are the specific procedures, rules, and also tasks that are designed and implemented within an entity by management to ensure that the objectives of the entity are achieved. And these objectives fall into three broad categories. One is related to effectiveness and efficiency of operations. Internal controls. Candidates, we are dealing here now with the objectives. Objectives fall into three categories. Categories of objectives. One, we have effectiveness, number one, and efficiency of operations. Effectiveness and efficiency of operations is the first category of objectives. This relates to how well the entity uses its resources to achieve its goals, including performance, including financial targets, and also safeguarding assets against loss. Number two is reliability. Reliability of financial reporting. This focuses on ensuring that financial statements and other financial information are accurate, complete, and reliable. You understand? Then, of course, three, we have compliance with applicable laws and regulations. Compliance with applicable laws and regulations. This ensures the entity adheres to all relevant legal and regulatory requirements, because we know organizations operate in a legal environment where rules, laws, regulations have to be obeyed, and therefore compliance with applicable laws and regulations is also another category of objectives. So Internal controls are specific policies, procedures, tasks. These are activities that are designed and instituted to ensure that the goals of an organization are met. Now, examples of internal controls would include, these are categories. Examples include segregation of duties, authorization and approval. We have segregation duties. Now, segregation of duties ensures that no single person has control over all the aspects of a transaction. No single person should have the authority over all the steps involved in a transaction. For example, if it is sales, if you are selling on credit, the one who is approving orders should not be the one making the deliveries and should not be the one to receive payment. There has to be segregation of duties in that regard. The person who authorizes a payment should not be the same person who processes it and also records it. There has to be segregation of duties. Authorization and approval. Authorization and approval. This requires specific levels of management to approve transactions beyond a certain threshold. For transactions to be executed, there has to be authorization and approval, and there ought to be levels of management to approve transactions beyond a certain limit or threshold. Examples, number 3, reconciliations. From the word reconcile, reconciliations. This means comparing records from different sources to ensure accuracy. We may have reconciliation of bank accounts. We may have reconciliations of stocks, reconciliations of trade receivables. This has to happen. Reconciliation of accounts payables and all that. Reconciliations is also another example of internal controls. For physical controls, this means safeguarding assets through measures like locks, safes, security cameras, restricted access, etc. If you have assets, physical assets, you can safeguard them physically by limiting access to such assets and so on. Physical controls are examples of internal controls. Then number 5, there is what we call information systems processing controls. Information processing controls. Information processing controls. These are controls with within the IT systems to ensure the accuracy, completeness, and authorization of data. For example, having password policies, data backups, edit checks, and so on. Information processing controls. So that's the meaning of internal controls. We've given examples of internal controls. Then let's move on to internal control system. What is an internal control system? Internal system. Internal control system is the overall framework or structure of policies and procedures effected by an entity's management designed to provide reasonable assurance about the achievement of an entity's objectives. So it is a comprehensive strategy that encompasses all the individual internal controls within an organization. So internal control systems, or an internal control system, is the overall framework. It is the overall framework. An internal control system is the overall framework or structure, the overall structure of internal controls or structure of policies and procedures. Structure of policies and procedures, rules, activities designed to help an organization achieve its objectives. It is the overall framework. You need to include here framework. It is the overall framework or structure of policies and procedures effected by the management designed to provide reasonable assurance about the entity's achievement of goals, about the achievement of the entity's objectives. It is a comprehensive strategy that encompasses all the individual internal controls. When you put together all these individual controls, segregation of duties, authorization and approval, reconciliations, physical controls, information system processing controls, all manner of controls, all of them, they comprise now the internal control system, because a system is a group of components. So the organization may have all these components together under the internal control system. So while individual internal controls are the building blocks, the internal control system refers to how these controls are integrated, managed, and monitored across the entire organization. It's not just a collection of rules, but a dynamic process that operates continuously to support the entity's mission and strategic goals. So a widely categorized, I don't know if you're understanding what I'm saying, candidates. It refers to how the individual controls are integrated. These are individual controls. So it is the internal control system now that integrates the whole of these individual controls into a whole, where these internal controls are then, these activities are then managed and monitored across the entire organization. And there are 5 interrelated components that constitute an effective internal control system. An internal control system has the following components. For an internal control system to be effective, it must have these 5 components. One is control environment. Control environment, which is set by management. It is the tone at the top. The tone at the top. This sets the tone of an organization. Control environment sets the tone of an organization, influencing the control consciousness of its people. It includes the integrity and ethical values of management, the commitment to competence, board of directors oversight, management's philosophy and also operating style. It refers to the organizational structure, the assignment of authority and responsibility, and the human resource policies and practices. That environment is what we are referring to as control environment. The first component is control environment, which sets the tone of an organization at the top. It is influenced by the control consciousness of the people. That's the first component. The second component is risk assessment. Risk assessment is a second component of internal control system, and it involves the entity's identification and analysis of relevant risks to the achievement of its objectives. So risk assessment refers to the entity's identification and also analysis of relevant risks to the achievement of its objectives, which then forms the basis of determining how the risks should be managed. Then 3, we have control activities as the third element. Control activities. These are the policies and procedures that help ensure management directives are carried out to address risks, and they occur throughout the organization at all levels and in all functions. We've been mentioning some of them. Segregation of duties, authorization and approval, reconciliations, physical controls, internal checks. We can go on and on. These are control activities, the rules, the procedures that are put in place to ensure that the organization manages the risks. Then we have information and communication. Information and communication is the 4th component of internal control system. This involves identifying, capturing, and communicating pertinent information in a form and time frame that enable people to carry out their responsibilities. And effective communication flows down, it flows across, it flows upwards, and also it flows externally. Last but not least is monitoring activities. Monitoring activities. Now, monitoring activities is a process that assesses the quality of the internal control system's performance over time. It includes ongoing monitoring activities. It includes separate evaluations or combination of both. So do you understand, candidates? That is an internal control system. And in closing, I want you to appreciate that internal controls, because we have been studying 2 things in this lesson. We've studied internal controls and internal control system. It's important to know and remember that internal controls are specific actions and mechanisms, like the physical controls. These are specific. Segregating of duties, these are specific things. Reconciliations, these are specific things and mechanisms. Internal controls are actions. These are specific actions and mechanisms. While an internal control system is the overarching framework that organizes, integrates, and also manages these controls in order to help achieve its objectives, in order to help achieve the organization's objectives. And that's all for our today's lesson, where we've distinguished these 2 things, internal controls and internal control system. Bye-bye. Greetings and welcome to the auditing learning session. Today we're moving to the second chapter, audit plan or plan for an audit. In this chapter, we're going to study the audit planning strategy, number 1. Number 2, objectives of audit planning. 3, development of an audit, overall audit plan. 4, development of audit programs. 5, limitations of audit plans. And lastly, international standards on auditing, on audit planning. So we'll be taking a subtopic at a time. Today we begin with audit planning strategy. Audit planning strategy. Now, in studying audit planning strategy, we are required to highlight 3 areas. That is the knowledge of the client's business, the degree of reliance on internal controls, and nature, timing, and extent of the work to be performed. But first of all, what is an audit planning strategy? Now, it's important to understand, candidates, that when embarking on an audit, just like any other assignment, it could be building a house or starting a course or getting married. If you want to embark on any assignment, you have to have a plan. And just like any other assignment, auditing requires a solid plan, which is essential for assuring efficiency, effectiveness, and also the ability to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence. An auditor is required to express an opinion on the financial statements of an entity. For the auditor to express an opinion, the auditor is required to gather appropriate, sufficient evidence. Before then, the auditor has to have a plan on how the work is to be carried out. So an efficient audit, an effective audit depends on how well the auditor has planned his work. So when embarking on an audit, a solid plan is essential to ensure efficiency, effectiveness, and the ability to gather sufficient appropriate evidence. So the audit planning strategy candidate sets the stage for the entire engagement. And if you are to define an audit planning strategy, we would say that an audit planning strategy is a high-level. It is a high-level framework that an auditor develops at the outset of an audit assignment or engagement. It is a high-level framework. Audit planning strategy is a high-level. It is a high-level framework. It is a high-level framework that an auditor develops the outset of the engagement, at the beginning. All right? It broadly outlines the scope, timing, and direction. It broadly defines the scope, timing, and direction of the audit assignment. And this is a strategic approach that is designed to help the auditor effectively allocate resources, to identify and assess risks. It also ensures a thorough and efficient examination of the financial records. And in essence, candidates, it's the auditor's game plan. It is the auditor's game plan. It is the auditor's roadmap. It is the game plan. It is the roadmap. The auditor, for engaging on the assignment, he has